offensive storylines, guys. We've hit on quarterback, but what about Danny Kaelin? I mean, it's always Raiola and obviously Harburg, but man, this is a big spring for Daniel Kaelin, and also our first taste of Glenn Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Kaelin wants to come in and establish himself as well. I was just gonna say the top backup, but my guess is a guy of that caliber athlete is coming in to win the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope he doesn't take himself out of it because the fans take him out of it and the sports writers take him out of it. But the bottom line is it's kind of what we talked about earlier. He's got to make progress. There's got to be a lot of progress made quickly. And how will they do that if he's not getting hit much? That's going to be a kind of a tricky needle to thread.
One way that they can do it, though, is by only having 3 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster.
Reps.
Those are going to be reps aplenty for all 3 of those guys. They're
Yeah.
going to get probably more work for a freshman scholarship quarterback coming into his first spring than maybe anybody. And that, I think, is going to help with that development. And what an opportunity to really showcase what you can do. I mean, you're going to get chances upon chances against the top level defense. And what happens if he starts turning heads and starts making the same throws, if not better throws than Dylan? And then all of a sudden, maybe it's a different conversation going into fall camp.
Yep.
You're listening here to the Husker Online show. Let's move it over to running back discussion, because no Gabe Ervin or Ramir Johnson this spring. They're going to be recovering. So we mentioned Emmett Johnson, but Dante Dowdell, the transfer from Oregon, is going to get a huge opportunity. And Quentin Ives, the true freshman from a year ago.
And Emmett Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Emmett first. Those 3 guys are going to get a lion's share of the carries this spring.
Huge.
And they'll get good reps. And, can somebody emerge from that group as a one? And then you would have to figure both Ervin Jr. and Ramir Johnson are going to be factored back into the offense when they return.
Yeah, you need 5 at that position minimum. So, yeah, Emmett Johnson comes off a pretty good year, 90 carries, 411 yards. That's 4.6 per carry. That's pretty good. Dowdell carried it 17 times last year at Oregon for 90 yards, was shuffled back. So what's Dowdell look like? That's what you wonder. Also, Emmett Johnson shows up for the dunk contest. Was it February 25th? I think it was. The dunk contest at halftime of the Minnesota basketball game. Big. He looked big. I mean, he's put on size. That picture intrigued me. In fact, I thought it was Ervin when I first saw him. I thought that was Gabe Ervin. Ervin's a big bag. What?
Totally different sizes.
No, I thought, but
Gabe's like 6'1", probably.
That's my point, though. Emmett looked big.
Yeah.
We're pretty far up too.
It's all right. So I'm equally interested in Emmett Johnson because I thought that he was by far the most consistently productive running back of that group, just with injuries and all that, and turning fumbles and all that stuff. But then the amount of kind of unprompted praise that Matt Rule himself put out for Quentin Ives has been intriguing me for months. Like, he played a tiny little bit, like enough to just give him a taste of it. But I'm very curious to see, especially with this spring and the limited numbers they have at running back and the workload that he's going to get. We talked about the quarterbacks getting reps. Ives is going to get plenty of reps as well. How is he going to take?
I'll be surprised if he emerges over those other guys.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, what's he going to do with that opportunity?
Well, yeah, I mean, because I guess Emmett Johnson a year ago was in a similar position. But I just, from what I've heard and know, I think the other guys will be better than him. I mean,
Dowdell and Emmett Johnson.
Yes. Yeah. And then the 2 coming back. It'll be interesting to see, because you got to remember, Ives was a late take. I mean, it was like that they had to just get a running back, and it wasn't like they courted him and recruited him for a long time to Nebraska. And Emmett Johnson was a late take. So they haven't really been able to recruit like a true high school running back, or they courted him the whole process since back to a guy like Gabe Ervin Jr.
Dowdell is that type of running
back. But they just recruited him from the portal.
Right. That it's different. But I guarantee you he was courted by teams.
Everybody,
like their number 1 guy.
And they had one in Kewan Lacey. They lost.
Yeah, that's the big one.
What about Malachi Coleman guys and Jalen Lloyd at receiver, and just can they emerge and kind of lock in spots? And we don't talk about this guy either. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda.
Yep.
He's back. We've heard Coach Rule mention his name the last few weeks, but you go back, he had over 100 yards receiving in a game in Ireland a couple years ago. And can he at least get in that rotation? I'm not saying he's going to be the leading receiver, but is he a rotation guy?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 28 years old.
He's 28.
I mean, he's pretty old. I don't
Yeah.
know if he's 28, but he's pretty old. So he's experienced. Yeah, you would think he'd be a guy that would. You wonder about Jaden Doss. I mean, the big ones are Jaden Doss, Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd. Alex Bullock's back too.
Demetrius Bell.
Oh yeah, Demetrius.
And
Bell.
you'll have Davon Hall here for the spring. So that's one to watch.
Oh yeah,
And I
That
believe
is one.
Keelan Smith, I believe, is here for the spring too.
Right. I don't know whether to put him at tight end or wide receiver.
We haven't listed him and Carter Nelson are very similar.
Hybrids.
But I would say he's listed as He's listed as a receiver by Nebraska.
I mean, the leading returning receiver is Alex Bullock. I mean, he had 15 catches last year, 221 yards. But those young speedsters are a little more enticing to you, right? Jalen Lloyd, Malachi Coleman, and Jaden Doss. I wouldn't ever leave Jaden Doss out of these conversations. And then you have the big horses transfers. I mean, they're here, Isaiah Nayor and Jamal Banks. Those are your main guys. That's who we're talking about, unless you're trying to throw a true freshman in there.
I think having Garcia Castaneda as a third or even fourth option, that's a huge luxury to have.
Could
Because, I
be.
mean, he was potentially one of their top guys last year before he got hurt. I mean, he got hurt really early,
Mhm.
but he was being targeted a lot. And coming out of fall camp, there was a lot of praise about the work that he had put in since returning to Nebraska. So, I mean, just the depth that we're talking about now at receiver.
They have more.
Well, it's better.
Yeah.
It's better, especially if the transfers are what we think they can be and they're two top flight guys. And then you're supplementing with all those other guys. I mean,
Right.
that's
Looks pretty good.
with those, with the returning guys like Coleman, Lloyd, Bell, Doss, with Bullock coming back and then Garcia Castaneda. I mean, that's some quality depth.
It looks like the room of a Big Ten team.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that last year.
Yeah. Where you're like 3 or 4 deep total.
Right. This looks more like a Big Ten school wide receiver room should look like.